Hey everyone, it is Thursday, June 2nd, 2022. Welcome to Quick Takes. I'm your host, Alex Riley, and today we're focusing on a few headlines, including Pine proving that VCs remain attracted to Canadian fintech opportunities. We will introduce and give you a bit of a preview and look ahead for our newest podcast series dropping called ThreeComa Club. And we're also going to show you what's coming up for any of our TechTo community. I'll bring up Alex Norman to join me. Hey.
Hey, Alex, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good.
Bit of a lighter week this week,
Yeah.
just in the ecosystem in general. Let's start with the Pine news and why Pine is proving that VCs are attracted to Canadian fintech opportunities. So maybe just what is Pine for those that might
Yeah.
not know?
Well, probably most people don't know because they just came out of stealth or now announced what they were doing this week.
Mhm.
Pine is a Canada-only fintech company trying to reinvent the Canadian mortgage experience by providing a completely digital and vertically integrated mortgage. And they went live, I think, yesterday in Ontario.
Yeah. Fintech companies have seen valuations drop significantly, especially in the last 6 months. They've been some of the hardest hit late stage companies. So why was Pine able to raise and go through the process?
So the announcement here was two rounds. So a
Mhm.
6 million seed round in 2021 and a $21 million Series A that was closed in March. So this was raised just before the market took another downturn. So
Mhm.
some is the timing it, but more importantly, there's a few things here. First of all, the mortgage market is a massive market in Canada, and it's dominated by the Canadian big banks, the A lenders. So that's like the RBCs, the BMOs, and the ones that are household names have 73% of the market. And generally they don't have a fully digital product. I think Scotia is exception, but so you've got massive market, relatively concentrated with what looks like potentially weak products. Second, there's examples of US fintech companies succeeded with a similar approach and model. So you have Blend, which we'll get back to in a second, and Rocket Mortgage, which in a much more competitive market, yes, it's 10 times bigger,
Mhm.
but have been able to bring massive venture-backed scalable companies. um, Second of all, this is something that's time consuming and to vertically integrate and be a lender. For example, you have to work to get CMHC approval. So you need money to do this. And then the founders have experience at successful startups in the US, including Blend. So one of the founders was at Blend, which is one of the US inspiration. So, there's a mix of massive market, looks ripe for the taking. You need capital to actually do something interesting, and you have founders that are credible.
And I was going to ask you, is there anything else that was interesting about the financing, and also why do they need that so much?
Okay, so yeah, like look, both rounds were led by Greylock, a U.S. well-known VC, and what's interesting, they invested heavily in Blend. So they've seen a small work in the States. They have someone they trust that worked at Blend. Let's go open a Canadian market, which is big enough. Um, they need money for two reasons. Most people probably say, "Oh, they need $27 million. They're going to be lending off their balance sheet." Potentially, but there's two large investments I need to actually make it dent. First is to get regulatory approval to be a lender. This
Mhm.
takes time, 12 to 18 months, and money. Second of all, they need to invest in building a brand. Like Wealthsimple did this at the beginning. You used to see Wealthsimple, doing Super Bowl ads or being everywhere. So if you're gonna, it should be easier when you're lending money. People care less about the safety and security, but they still need to be aware that you're out there. You need to be at the top of the consideration set. So they need to invest in the brand. So think of another one. I don't know if you ever heard of Rocket Mortgage, which doesn't
Yep.
operate in Canada, but it's all over our media. And it's part of when you're selling money, people have to be aware that you're out there selling money.
So why do they want to be the CMCH
So
approval? Why do they need that?
so CMCH basically provides insurance and provides a backstop to lenders. And
Mhm.
so it allows you to offer cost-effective rates
Mhm.
to customers, right? If you're not CMCH approved, you could still be a lender, but
Yeah.
your rates are typically higher because your cost to get money that you're lending out is higher. So if you want to be competitive, you want to go after a big chunk, you want to take some of that 70% of that market share, you need to have the CMCH backing.
And lastly, just in your opinion, the key takeaways for our community from this news.
So big, bold, transformational industry bets are hard to do using a lean methodology. So you go back 5, 6 years ago, and this has been sort of lost with the last 2 years where, hey, let's go out, iterate, do customer development.
Yep.
Um, good for lots of companies, but when you're trying to do something, when you see there's an ability to create value by creating a better overall customer experience, but you have to rebuild entire experience from top to bottom, it's
Mhm.
hard to do without lots of money. And you need, sometimes you have to do what I call the fat startup. To do that though, to be able to pull the money off, you have to have insights into customer experience, have a massive market, and be credible with investors. Because in this case, capital is not only a strategic advantage, but it's absolutely imperative to have it. You can't do Pine without having enough capital to have the invest the time and people and
Right.
the brand. So that's the first thing.
Mhm.
Um, Interesting. Canada's a country with many oligopolies. If you can think most of the stuff we interact with day to day, there's only 3 to 5 big enterprises we deal with.
Yep.
They benefit a bit from regulatory capture because the rules are stacked against for them because they have a good relationship with the government. But if you can compete with them, they generally move slower, and there's generally higher margins compared to the US. So if you hypothetically if you want this, that's why every once in a while you see a new mobile carrier, because hey, our rates are higher here. If I
Yep.
can just break through, it's a nice juicy place to be. And I
Perfect.
guess finally, the founding announcements you read about today reflect the market where the market was 6 months ago. So this March, they close this round in March. I don't know if it's early March or late March. Probably
Yep.
start talking about it in January or December.
Mhm.
So it's hard to use current announcements. And announcements, look, and this is delayed 2 months. Usually announcements can be delayed 3 to 6 months. So lots of people are still saying, "Oh, well, I hear so and so is raising X value. Why can't I raise that?" Well, that's where the market was before, not now.
Right. Thank you, Alex. And speaking of some of those funding announcements and finding out about anything upcoming that's dropping for our community, if you don't already subscribe to the TechTo newsletter, you need to, techto.org/newsletter. Great place to hear about all of this news, right to your inbox. Great place to find out about new podcasts and series that are dropping. Is there anything that's been standing out to you recently in the newsletter
Well,
you've been enjoying?
I've been enjoying the Wednesday newsletters, which focus on career.
Mhm.
How to either become a founder or work at a cool startup. And I think as the market shifted, we still try to find the most interesting opportunities. And I
Yeah.
just like seeing there's still a lot of interesting opportunities out there. So if you're looking for your next opportunity, make sure you read Wednesday's newsletters.
Yeah, I would say Wednesdays I've been hearing great feedback from our community about people finding jobs and opportunities, or even just courses that they've wanted to take through our newsletter. It's always great to hear that it's been helping and supporting our community. Next up, without giving too much away, since the first episode drops tomorrow, I want to give the community a bit of a preview of our ThreeComa Club series. So, as you're hosting these conversations and getting to talk to these founders about, the journey from creation or idea to implementation, and then becoming a Canadian unicorn, what is something that's really interesting to you, and why should our community be really excited about this series?
Well, first, maybe even before you get into the series, let's remind the listeners why we started TechTo. Many reasons. One is we wanted to, build more connectivity, make it easier for you to get into the ecosystem. But we also wanted to build institutional knowledge or industry knowledge. And the three comma list is basically focuses on either public companies or private companies that are worth $1 billion or more when we started recording the podcast.
Mhm.
And what you have with companies that reach that status is usually you get the story. It all focuses on what they're doing now. You get a nice clean story of how it was easy and up to the right and how this was always meant to be. What we're trying to do with the ThreeComa Club podcast series is to get the real stories from points in time. We're trying to go back to why those companies came into being,
Mhm.
what it was like to scale, what it's like now, and what the future holds. So, they're relatively brief. They're like half an hour. I think
Yep.
with lots of these, I think with these founders, when we talk to them, you've been there recording them with me, Alex, we could probably speak 3 to 4 hours. But what we're
Yep.
trying to tease out is the reality of what it's like to start a company that becomes this valuable. Because,
Yep.
you know, when you talk to these founders, when you start off, you have an idea, but then there's all these challenges. And it's interesting with that. We've got many different types of companies. We've got Fair, who came out of YC and has been a bit of a venture capital darling with being able to raise capital really rapidly, and that's
Mhm.
because of great, quick, rapid execution. Versus point click care, which
Yep.
started 20 plus years ago when there was no financing in Canada, and has built a massive business with basically relatively little capital for 15 years. So
Right.
we're trying to cover many different types of companies
Mhm.
and just get insights.
I think another really interesting piece about these episodes too is nothing is sugar coated, right? No one's journey is ever the same, and no one's journey is easy. So I really do appreciate that founders have been very forthcoming with pivots, what they've done, how they've just tried to solve a problem or fill a gap, and yeah, how they've gotten to this point.
Yeah,
Um,
so like I guess one way to think of it is in quick takes. What we're trying to do every week is take apart the news, and
mhm.
you know, yes, we talk a lot about announcements. But we try to talk about what we think is happening behind announcements, what they mean for you, why they happen.
Yep,
Well, here we're doing the same thing with journeys, except for us guessing or having hypotheses. We're talking to people that actually were on those journeys,
yep,
so you're getting real insights into what it took to be one of the lucky few to build something massive.
yeah, from the ones who have done it before. Other than lots of learning and obviously takeaways, is there anything else that you hope our community gets from this series?
Well, I think there's a couple things. I think they get to understand these companies much better and what what the founders or leaders have thought about building these businesses.
Hmm.
And I think some I don't know if empathy is the right word, but understanding how you need to be incredible executors, incredible visionaries, and incredibly lucky to build these. So I want you'll hear how well, and I guess one actually Founders Friday episode we recorded yesterday
Hmm.
talks about how the market change and the customers led the company to what made it a much more profitable business. And you'll see the same thing with some of these 3 comma clubs. Like, hey, we thought about this and we did that, and this is what happened. Like
Yep.
one of them, they talked about how their pricing and terms are so good that they have to actually make them worse before people believe them. Which is not, everyone's like talks about, hey, you have to deliver 10x to succeed. Here the
Yep.
company is delivering 15x, and people said, hey, no way, this is possible. This is a lie. And so I said, okay, we'll give you an 8x, and all of a sudden it started taking off, which is counterintuitive, but also shows you how much you have to listen to customers and how stuff are counterintuitive.
And lastly, has there been anything that has surprised you about doing these or talking to any of these founders?
Well, again, and I don't know, it's surprising, but reinforces that every journey is different. And if for
Hmm.
every piece of advice I could give you about building a startup, I can give you a counter example where the counter advice is true. And we're seeing that with these
Yeah.
stories. Again, people flush with cash, people who didn't have cash, people that took 20 years, people that took 3 years, consumer enterprise. There's not one, it's not like you can get a paint by numbers way to build a massive company.
Yeah. There's no guidebook that's given to every entrepreneur that wants to start a business or launch
Maybe you get a lifetime membership. We send it to you.
yeah, we have the guidebook. Surprise.
Yeah.
No, that's great, Alex. I'm very excited for that one. So Fairs episode's dropping tomorrow. Obviously, it'll be full rundown in the newsletter, promoting that on social. Very excited for that. Before we finish off, I want to preview a little bit about what's upcoming for our community. June 13th, we're going to be back in Vancouver for Tech Fan. Very excited for that. June 21st, we're at Stacked Market again. Our summer social series continues. Hoping you can share maybe a little bit about what you're looking forward to about maybe the Stacked Market or summer social series that's continuing.
Also, I'm just glad to be back in real life. I love what we do digitally. I love our, these podcasts, our live streams.
Hmm.
But what we've missed as a community, and one reason we exist, is the random collisions where you run into someone you didn't know that you needed to know, and they either become your customer, your co-founder, an employee, your employer. So
Hmm.
the random collisions are what gets me excited, and I think we have great lineups for both. In Vancouver, we have the founder of Tiggy, fast-growing company, coming
Hmm.
in, and the founder of Coco NFT. So you want to talk about last, 15-minute grocery deliveries or NFTs, two things that have grown over the last 2 years since we last did, in person regularly.
Yep.
And in Toronto, the Stacked, we're going to be doing something a bit more fun. We're going to be having like VC entrepreneur dating, so trying a bit different. It's outdoors, it's loud.
Yep.
So we said, let's try something fun. And
Yep.
generally, I'm looking to see people out in person again.
Yeah, and I think that's been the biggest takeaway from everyone is just it's an opportunity to network and actually shake hands if you're comfortable with that, or approach people face to face and get to meet them. I'm very excited for that as well. And that kind of match game VC entrepreneur match game will be a lot of fun. I think it's something different that maybe a lot of people haven't seen. If you're interested in attending any of those events, techto.org. We have an IRL events tab. You can buy all of your tickets. So we hope to see you there. Alex, thank you so much for taking us through some of the news and what's upcoming for our community and from the ecosystem. Again, don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening to this episode. We hope to see you out at some of our upcoming in real life events. And we'll be back next week for more quick takes. We're also excited to drop ThreeComa Club tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. And we'll see you on the inside.
We're in the business of delivering impossible things. We're in the business of delivering things that nobody's ever seen before.
If you build that culture, you'll come up with really cool and innovative stuff, and literally could be in the next multi-billion-dollar idea.
So this conversation is largely going to be about scaling yourself and scaling your leadership team.
I want to talk about one of the biggest struggles that I think a lot of startups face early on, which is building initial traction.